is the genre of the books, but those themes within it is what's going to sell the book, and that you can use and tell people, okay, this is the themes that are in the book, and then that's going to get people to pick it up on top of just reading the blurb or looking at the cover. Like, they're the selling points that we need to be talking about. Welcome to Writers Uncorked, the podcast where we uncork the truth about the writer's life. We're your hosts, bestselling authors Jenna and Michelle Scott, and we're here to bring you the no BS chats you've been craving.
Get ready to raise a glass to the real, unfiltered world of writers. This is Writers Uncorked.
Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about the intention behind your writing. So I'm super excited about this. How about you, Michelle?
I'm really excited about it. I think it's an important topic. Don't mind my croaky voice. I have a cold, but we'll get through that. We can still talk plenty.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think intention is, I think it's not to be taken lightly. I don't think you sit down and you just, I mean, sure, people can write books off the cuff, but I think the question that you want to ask yourself as a writer is, what is my intention? Not like overall, generally, like, what do I intend as a writer to achieve? What is my goal? And for me, I'm always looking at my readers, right? Because they're the ones that are going to come back and keep supporting and buying these books and so forth. So I look at that. I'm like, what do I want here? What is my goal? What do I intend? And what I intend as an overall generality is I intend to entertain. And I intend that when a reader picks up one of my books, and I've said this time and time again, is that when they read one of my books, it's a touch point of joy. And what I mean by that, which is kind of an odd thing to maybe say when you're talking about, because I write mysteries and thrillers, a little bit easier with romance, right? It's love. Yeah. I have some romance in mine too, but I'm dealing with murder, and in my thrillers, they're really dark. They tend to be. And so, like, wow, what do you mean a touch point of joy? What I mean by that is we live, right, in these interesting times with a lot going on, and sometimes we just need to be taken out of that day-to-day space. And readers just want to have a few hours of entertainment, or 20 minutes at night before going to bed, right? A little bit of escapism. So that's what I mean by that. And then I go even more specific. After I look at generalities, I look at each book as I start out and as I'm developing a storyline. And even though I write, like you would say, it's kind of like pulp fiction at some degree, there's always for me underlying themes that are playing out in today's culture, I feel like, or today's society, that I want to touch on. For instance, writing this last book, which we talked about quite a bit, Engagingly Dead, there are themes in there that, even though there's a lot of humor and there's romance and there's a murder mystery, thematically, we're talking about a character who's coming up on 50, who's become an empty nester, who is divorced, who, is starting to date again and figure that out in her life, and then as she goes into this, just uncovers this, there's the murder piece and there's the mystery. And as she's pulling back the layers of the mystery, we get to a whole nother very deep topic of human trafficking, right? Which is something that is happening daily in our world. And I think it's a dark thing that we don't like to talk about, but it's in this book. And the intention behind it was for people to go, you know what, this is happening. And let's look at it this way, maybe. Yeah. But dealing with some of those topics in the lightest way possible, but making, not just being a fun romantic comedy mystery right.
That's like the overarching. And then you've got this, and it's almost like a lot of our listeners might have heard of the T. Taylor and butter, and talking about the 7-figure fiction, and like that's those butter points in it. Like, you've got your overarching, like, okay, this is the genre of the books, but those themes within it is what's going to sell the book, and that you can use and tell people, okay, this is the themes that are in the book, and then that's going to get people to pick it up on top of just reading the blurb or looking at the cover. Like, they're the selling points that we need to be talking about and creating content around, because when you know them, it makes it easier to tell a stranger on the street, because it's, when you're doing social media, that's what you're doing essentially, like telling a stranger of like, okay, here's why you want to buy the book. And if you've got those butter bits or whatever you want to call them, that are going to be relatable, you know. And I see it a lot in terms of you know, mental health and, you know, well-being and stuff like that. If you've gone through something, and I've read books on, you know, to get a little personal, like I've had an eating disorder and, you know, self-harm in my teen years, and there was a one book that was on that, and like I really related to it, even though it was hard to read back over it, but there was this author did it so well that it was like relatable to me, and I could get into it and just feel some of those emotions, and then like look back on my journey and be proud of like where I am at. And, you know, talking about, you know, you're talking about human trafficking. Like I haven't experienced that, but it's good to know about what is actually happening in the world and your eyes open to that, right?
Yeah. And I mean, obviously not every individual can relate to that, right? We can't relate. However, two things is one that you just touched upon about, you know, with having an eating disorder and reading something and being able to relate. You know, I can't personally relate to that, but I can relate to hardship, right? I can relate to suffering. I can relate to some of those pieces. And I think all of us can. And really, a good writer, that is her job, is to get us to relate to her characters. If I, as a writer, can get you to relate and then you're feeling connected, that's really what we all want to feel as human beings, right? Is connection. Like we want that. And so getting that from our characters in books to where they feel like, even though we're writing fiction, so to speak, getting them to feel is what gets them to read. It's what will get your readers
turning the pages.
Absolutely.
And wants to see. And that comes down, the character's journey. And I just put out a arc for me and my co-writer, Jay. We just sent out arcs for the second book in our series. And like the amount of messages I'm getting of like, oh my God, how can this character, like he's struggling so much and what he's done to the main character, and they're not really happy. But I think that's the point of like, you don't want to write characters that are just like, get everything that they want and like it's an easy road, and it's like, you know, because that's not relatable. They're not going through stuff.
No, it's not real life, and it doesn't connect you to humans, right? To other humans. There's no connection there. And this is a whole another side note, but talking about characters and relatability, and that being the ultimate goal, because there is a little bit of there's kind of two camps a lot of times from writers' perspectives, is that plot versus character. What's more important? I think plot is also important. I personally think, though, your characters are more important, because if I don't give a shit, about your characters, I'm not going to continue reading your book. You can give me a great plot, right? And now that's not to say, so like, okay, probably many of you have seen the show Succession, right? I don't know if you have or not. It's on HBO. Anyway, pretty much all the characters are actually kind of heinous, right? Like you don't really love anybody, but you also really don't like them, which is a whole nother opposite. Like, but you're feeling something, right? And that's the key. So you want to know what happens to them, because you're like, well, I'm feeling something. So, you know, whether it's love or hate, it's an emotion that they are emotions we can all relate to. And
I think that comes, and that comes back to intention of like what we're talking about, because I knew that we always like go off on a tangent of talking about like when we get excited about something, and that's the reason why we wanted to do this together, because we always have such great conversations about all of this and nerd out. But going back to like that intention, and I always think, for me personally, when it comes to intention, like the overarching intention for writing is to bring the joy to the readers, like you were talking about. But then on specific books, it comes down to like for me, my intention is like making the relatable characters and having and weaving in these themes and things that people can connect to. And it all comes back to like, you know, the escape that it gives them and the joy, and being able to relate and feel like they're not alone in this world of like, you know, a little thing that the character does, or like, you know, something might happen to her, or you know, a certain situation, and they can relate to, even if it's an emotion, not even going through that, but that's where that's my intention. Like I love doing that, because it just gives that opportunity to someone that might not be feeling so great, or might not have resources, but they've got this book to escape into. Like life might be shit, because, you know, it's not always good, and they've got that place to be able to escape into that character and go on that journey with them. Like, how amazing is that?
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Right. And now I'll veer off a little bit here, and because I'd like your thoughts on this, because not to be completely altruistic, because yes, those are those are the ultimate goals, because you want readers to feel and connect. But coming from a writer's perspective as well, we also want to make a living. We want to earn money at this. Like, let's not sugarcoat it, right?
Yeah.
And we should. We're putting out a service, right? And so how do you, so when you start out and you're looking at each book individually, I'm just asking this from a business perspective and thinking this through, is how do you look at each book individually and say, I want my intention is to sell X amount of these books, or my intention is to be on the top 100, or my intention, is to earn out this much on this book? Do you look at that? Because I think you're also big into scripting. We can even get into that if we want to. I know I script out. Do you ever do that or set that forth and put that out into the universe? Because we're going to talk a lot here on this podcast over time about manifestation and I think, and law of attraction and stuff around our writing. It's important. It's, at least it's to us. So
yeah, definitely. And it's interesting. I'll tell you a story about that. And I haven't really voiced this out or told anyone about this, but like a series that I just released this year, I had huge intentions for it. I was like, okay, this is going to be a bestseller. I'm going to make this much from it, because it was really good. And the reviews that we got back from our ARC readers, like, it's a good book. Like, it is really good. And then we published it and we didn't get the results that I thought. Like, I had this, I feel so good about this. Like, I'm putting it out into the universe. I did a lot of meditations about it. And I was just like, this is going to be a bestseller. Like, it's going to hit the ground running. And it didn't. And it was sort of deflating, because I'm like, oh shit. Like, I really thought, like, it's so good. And we really thought it was going to hit. So I didn't just sit here and was like, I did feel sorry for myself. I did for a couple of days.
You got to do that. Yep.
Yeah. And then I was like, okay, well, why is it not selling? Like, what is happening? And I went to a few author friends and I sort of put it out there. I'm like, okay, look, this is a really good book. It's hit, this is what it is, blah, blah, blah. Take a look on Amazon, take a look at the blurb, take a look at the cover. Let me know your thoughts. And they're like, I think it's the cover. Like, I think the cover is not working. If you look at the other covers in this genre and, up against that, it's just not hitting that mark. So we went back and we're like, okay, let's switch up, because discrete covers are really popular right now. Everyone wants a cover that just doesn't even make sense. And I think, I don't even know what I'm reading, but that's what readers want. And sometimes you do have to have two covers now. This is another talk we can chat about later, but like, it's hard because sometimes you have to have the guy with no top. It depends what genre, like romance, you got to have, sometimes a guy with no shirt and like a sexy guy, blah, blah, blah. Then you got to have a discrete cover that's literally like, it could be flowers or like just random objects on a cover. And you got to have those two options, because like, if one goes up and it's like, it's not selling, you got to have a backup. And like, I know Sky Warren does this. She has like, like 10 covers or something in backup, because like, if one cover's not working, she'll like flip it up and change it until something does hit. And it's huge. Like, it's an investment. It's ridiculous. But like, the point of this, and it's like, it's a lot. But the point of this is, what I'm getting at is, I did put it out there and I trusted it, but something's not hitting and something wasn't working. So we changed it up. We sort of looked at, okay, why isn't it working? And, there is a lot of variables of like, okay, timing, or like, what's happening right now, or it could be, there was this TikTok thing going around of like people not reading series till they're complete. And so that puts a hardship on authors, because it's like, well, if a book doesn't sell, we're not going to do as many books in the series. And it's a lot to produce, and like the production costs of that. Like, it's hard. It's hard.
It's actually becoming, this, even though it sort of veers off the topic, but not really. It's actually becoming harder and harder to be an author and a writer. And I think, so years ago, I did a kind of a brief documentary on Amazon after I had breakout sales with Daddy's Home. And then they bought some other books from me and so forth. And so, at the time when all of that happened, when KDP first started out, and there was not a very large group of us, sales just, we boomed, right? And then things changed. The algorithms changed. Whatever it was that changed, it changed. And a lot of people bottomed out. I've learned a lot from that. I learned a lot. And one of the things I learned was, well, I am a writer, so I'm not going to let this take me out, which it did for a period. It really did. and I didn't write for a while because I was so disheartened because it's really hard when you're like at the top, you've got books hitting number one, and then all of a sudden it's just like the rug's pulled out from underneath you. And so at the time though, when I did this documentary, this thing, I was saying, oh, it's a great time to be a writer. There's so many avenues. Right. And then what happened was within a few years, the floodgates opened and everybody's writing and everybody's publishing, and it's just completely flooded. And there's no rhyme or reason as to what works. Right. I mean, this has been a topic we've discussed quite a bit. And so it's like there's Amazon ads, there's Facebook ads, there's Kickstarter, there's Patreon, there's, it's really hard to know what is the direction. And so I'm circling back to intention, because at the end of the day, most writers are probably not going to be in that echelon that makes a bunch of money at this. So you have to get real with yourself and decide, am I gonna stay in this game and keep writing the books I love, and because I love to write, right? Now, that's not to say that you can't there are ways, but you have to be willing. And I talked to newbie writers who don't. Just recently I talked to somebody who, yes, their idea is amazing, right? It's great, but they have to be willing to put the work in. And what I mean by that, you have to be willing to take the courses, look at your options, and really come up with a plan that hopefully works for you. And then also be realistic and understand it may not.
Yeah. And that's reality these days. Yeah. It's either you're going to do it on the side as, you've got a full-time job, you're able to put money into it because it's expensive. Like not only time to write. I never time myself for, like, if you added up the amount of time to write a book and then put a price to that. Yeah. I don't think anyone's ever done that because it'd be too much, but I'm talking about but
it's a lot of time. Not to be like a downer on any of this, because it can be done. And I think a lot of times we have to be our own, not a lot of times we have to be, because it's such an isolating job or, choice to write, you have to be your own cheerleader. Yeah. And so you have to keep your chin up when it doesn't look.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's easy to give up. It's easy to be like, okay, well, it's not working or whatever it might be. But if you continue, it's easy to do that. But if you make it happen, it might take a year, it might take 2 years, it might take one release. Like some people can put something out in a hit. It's like that. No one knows the answer to that. It's time. It's the right time. Like I think that's the key. Like if something's really hitting right now, or, they just had Bridgerton and it was super popular right then, and then sales just skyrocketed for that particular genre and people that are writing very similar because everyone's into it.
She wrote Bridgerton back in the early 2000s.
Yeah. I met her at a book signing in Melbourne, Julia. That was pretty cool.
When?
But yeah, it was this year. Yeah. She came to Melbourne. But I think it comes back to the intention that we're talking about today, that, okay, well, when you're starting writing, even before your intention for a particular book, it's the intention of, okay, am I doing this as something, because most times we do it out of love of writing first, but then there's a point and there's a scale when you're like, okay, am I going all in on this? Am I turning this into a business? Am I going to make shit happen? And I'm like that this year. I wrote and released a book in 2018, and even those days it was I put the book out there and that particular genre was really popular, and I sold a lot, and then had really great success, but then it just then I gave up on marketing, or my day job got in the way, and I couldn't put in that time and that effort and go all in. Whereas this year is very much for me going back all in on writing and being okay, I'm gonna invest into this because I've got other money that can help me and support me to go all in and see. And I've got a time frame where I'm okay, if it happens, it happens. If not, I can pull back and just do whatever, what it might be. But I think that comes back to the intention of okay, well, what do I want to get out of this as well? And am I making it? You got to have the passion, but business wise, there's a huge element. We can talk about this on another episode, the business element of writing. Yeah.
You have to run this like a business.
Yeah.
If you want to succeed at it.
Yeah.
You can't just this like a hobby.
No.
If you want the chance to succeed, you have to run this like a business. And I'm talking down to, and I've been great at this lately, honestly. And it's probably why I'm kind of in a slump. Down to looking at what you're putting out, what's coming in, what are you doing marketing wise? What is your plan? What is your, are you responding to all your readers? What does social marketing look like?
Yeah.
Who's your team? You're only as good, you got to have a team too, really, to help you, because reality is there is only so much time in the day. And not to be morbid, but we have a certain amount of days on this earth, right? So how do you want to spend your time? Right? Yeah. How do you want to spend today and tomorrow? If if you have the blessing of having tomorrow, and so it's like, you having a good team, if you can afford to do so, is important.
Yeah,
and that's a whole nother topic we can hit upon. It'd be really interesting to listen to hear back from people who are listening as to what they'd like us to talk about. But one of the things that we would be is the business aspect of it.
It is. And I see time and time again, people that are using it as a hobby, and there's nothing wrong with that. That comes back to intention, if that's the way you want to go with that. So as I was saying about turning it into, the people that do have a lot of success are that business minded. And I think that's a super big key. If you're going all in, you've got to look at the business side of things. And we're going to do another episode on this, because I think that's super important, of like, okay, well, what does it even look like, and unpacking that whole thing. But I think today very much on the intention, and going back to what we were talking about, having your intention, just a little bit of a wrap up based on what we were talking about, like, creating an intention for, I think, your overall writing and why you're writing, and the intention behind your writing, as well as intentions for each book that you're putting out there. And even how you're showing up on social media and stuff like that, like what's your intention behind that, and really going back to that, because I think you're having your intention can really help to, bring that, I think, to bring yourself back, isn't it?
Yes, I do. I think I think everything has to come down to the intention of it.
Yeah.
And on the creative side and the business side.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really does. So,
exactly.
All
right.
And thinking it through.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're always going to, move back to that. And it's going to help you, no matter where you are at in your author business, always coming back to your intention to bring you back, and revisiting that and relooking at it. It's not just a set and forget. Like, it's always going to inspire us and bring us back to why we're doing what we're doing.
Exactly. No, it does. And why do we do what we do? Why do we do what we do?
Exactly.
Right.
And that's going to help.
And it's because you want to tell a story. You want to tell a good story.
Yeah.
That people can relate to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to leave it at that. And we hope you've enjoyed this episode. I know we've enjoyed recording and chatting as always. So we really do hope that, you've loved listening, and let us know in the comments, let us know by email, whatever, DM us, whatever it is, let us know, because we do love hearing from you and your main takeaways and what you want to listen to next, because we're happy to chat about whatever it is that you've got on your mind, right?
Yeah, I think one of the things that might be interesting to talk about next, I was thinking about it, is like one of the big questions I get, and I don't know about you, is where do your ideas come from?
Yes. Yes.
Where do ideas come from? And it'll be interesting to hear your perspective as a romance author, and then from the perspective of being a mystery and thriller author.
Yeah, and I've got a good story about that. Yeah, it was like because I had ideas dry up and stuff. So that's going to be a good episode. I can't wait.
No, it'll be great, because we'll touch upon, I think, writer's block in that, and how to get out of that.
Yes, definitely. All right, until next time, we will see you then. Bye.
All right. Bye.